What are the top issues impacting minority business owners? Here's what two experts have to say. This is the Issues Watch podcast. Hi, I'm Jeff Kazerman, Vice President of Government Relations at the New Jersey Society of CPAs, and welcome to episode 63. Many New Jersey businesses have been struggling during the pandemic. Minority-owned businesses are no exception, but they also face some unique challenges. Today, I'm joined by two guests. John Harmon is the founder, president, and CEO of the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey, which represents over 80,000 African American owned businesses. Welcome, John.
Delighted to be here, my friend.
And Carlos Medina is the president and CEO of the Statewide Hispanic Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey, which represents 120,000 Hispanic owned businesses. Welcome, Carlos.
My pleasure to be here with you today, Jeff.
So let's get this started. Overall, and let's start with you, Carlos. Overall, how have your members fared now that we're nearly 11 months into the pandemic?
It's been tough, but there is one silver lining. Hispanic businesses, and I'll let John speak for his organization, but I would say minority businesses are battle tested because we have to jump through hoops and have to do things often 2-3 times as good as everybody else. So it's not unusual to have many obstacles placed in front of us. So because of that, I think we're faring a little stronger than, Main Street businesses. We graduated 80 entrepreneurs last year in 2 different cohorts, and not one has closed their business. And statistics say 24 of them should have shut their doors down. So it's certainly been a struggle. It's been a lot of hand-holding and mentoring, but knock on wood, our organization, we had reserves in the bank, rainy day money, and a lot of our partners and friends, including John and other chambers, we've rallied together to help all New Jersey businesses get through this. So it's been a tough time, but there's positivity and light at the end of the tunnel.
That's fascinating. John, same question for you.
Well, Carlos and I have been working tirelessly to really help not only advocate, but position many of our members for opportunities. And our businesses were decimated because of COVID-19. It's projected as many as 40% of them would be shuttered, and a lot of them were. But for some of the help from the PPP, EIDL loans, and New Jersey Economic Development Authority here in the state, Governor Murphy, with a lot of government incentives and stimulus, it would have been a darker day for a lot of businesses. So we're still not out of the woods. Unfortunately, the businesses are still struggling. It's about equitable share, right? Now, folks are existing on the margins, but if New Jersey is going to be a fairer and stronger state, there has to be more equitable distribution and opportunities. And so that's where I'm going to come at this conversation. The engagement, that's probably a silver lining in terms of the corporate sector has really responded in a very positive way. The financial services institutions have responded commensurately as it relates to how do we reset and reposition my businesses and Carlos's businesses to be more competitive in New Jersey. And that's where we are now. The conversations with corporations have been very encouraging. We've gotten some help from some new folks that we hadn't had before. So we're trying to build on that. Existing relationships, we're trying to go deeper into some of those with the hope that we may realize some benefits that's going to be fruitful and put us in a better place. But I'll close here The real challenge is public sector contracting in New Jersey for my members. And Carlos could address that as well, but it's a real problem. I mean, New Jersey is a union preference state. And when Governor Murphy says he's pro-union, I love it, but the unions are not equitable in terms of contracting. That's a fact. And if someone could show me some data that will push back on the statement, I'll accept it. But the reality is we have Black businesses in the trades that are experienced men and women, and they're not getting the call, right? The Port Authority is doing a lot of expansion. There's some stuff going on in the southern part of the state. There's the big wind project coming. All I'm saying is you got project labor agreements that give them a preference. We have a threshold of $5 million for exemption of non-union folks participating on these contracts. That threshold should be elevated to about 20 million. We still pay prevailing wage, which I think is fine, but we're paying taxes like everybody else, and we're not eating equitably in New Jersey.
Basically, so those project labor agreements, as a sort of unintended consequence, push out some minority-owned businesses that might be able to get in on that work.
Without question. So I guess for clarity's sake, what I'm saying is they have a baked-in preference in New Jersey on all public contracts. So if they, contracts over $5 million are subject to project labor agreements. So you see a $100 million building that's financed by the state or underwritten by the state, automatically they're in, right? New Jersey has no minority and women-owned goals. So Carlos, his folks, and my folks, there's no preferential pathway or assurance that we're going to be included. They'll make these good faith gestures, or we want to see diversity. That all sounds well and fine, but the unions, their preference is codified in law.
Right.
And we still have to get a disparity study to get us on equal footing, but that still doesn't translate into assurance that we're going to get equitable opportunities. I think it's wrong. And I think that leads to gross disparities. Last thing I'll say, and net worth, Blacks are at $5,900 in New Jersey. Whites at $309,000. I don't make these numbers up. So if we don't participate in a more meaningful way, you're not going to mitigate poverty. You're not going to mitigate median income. You're definitely not going to be in a position to own a home or to get on a pathway to create wealth.
Right.
And a home ownership is one way of starting to accumulate wealth.
Okay. Does New Jersey have set-aside programs and for minority and women-owned businesses?
I'll let Carlos respond to that.
John's gonna give me a couple minutes of the floor here.
Okay.
Yeah, ironically, because it's actually somebody that I am a competitor of. A company named Geod Incorporated sued the state when McGreevey was governor, saying that as a white firm in the construction industry doing professional services, they were discriminated against because set-aside programs. Because there had not been a disparity study, the Attorney General decided to settle the matter, and they made all the programs small business set-asides. They made them larger, but they're no longer minority or woman-owned businesses. So firms such as that firm have really benefited. It's ironic that somebody sues their client and then the client gives them more work. But that's what happened in New Jersey. And we were promised a disparity study 4 years ago. So John and I are still waiting. He and I could probably do it for a couple $1,000s and tell you what the answers are going to be. So it's very frustrating. There's a plethora of qualified Black and brown and woman businesses that are ready, able, and willing to do work in New Jersey in the private sector and the public sector. But right now there's no mandate, there's no mechanism, there's no incentive if anything, there's a lot of disincentives, as John has mentioned, because of unions, because of old relationships. And, you know, there's not even a buy Jersey. I know the state chamber's talking buy Jersey, but a client of mine was bidding on a $5 million project in Rutgers. And one of my members, it went out of state to Maryland. So it's ridiculous that New Jersey's paying millions and millions of dollars in fees out of state. But I'd say one step more than buy New Jersey, which is near and dear to my heart, buy New Jersey and buy diverse. Because the more bidders you have on a project, you're going to realize a better price. What happens today at Rutgers? 2 people get the opportunity to bid on a contract. 2, when there could be 20 bidders. So I don't think that's fair. Rutgers gets a lot of money from the state of New Jersey, and they got to open up their bidding processes. That all country club scenario there where all the friends are all bidding and it's a secret society. I can't get in there and have a company that does millions of dollars a year in construction services and professional services. I can't get into Rutgers to bid, and I'm a double alumni. I'm every alphabet of certification, but it goes to the same guys over and over again. So it's super frustrating. And I'm a pretty savvy businessman. So imagine my members that don't have lawyers and CPAs and business development employees. Right. They're never going to get a shot to bid. And who suffers? The New Jersey taxpayer, because then our cost to pave a highway is 10 times that of other states. Why? Because of what John mentioned with the closed union shops, with only 1 or 2 bidders bidding. So that drives the price up for construction of homes, for construction of commercial, for construction of highways, for construction of bridges. And me, the taxpayer, John, the taxpayer, Jeff, the taxpayer, suffer at the end of the day.
A recent Associated Press analysis of the SBA data, Small Business Administration data, shows that nationwide minority businesses were some of the last to receive Paycheck Protection Program loans, and they cited struggles with properly completing the application or finding a lender. John, has that been a problem? Have you seen that with your members here in New Jersey?
Well, I mean, initially, let's kind of level set here, right? If you look at the bill, the Senate, as it relates to the CARES Act, it was very specific that small minority women-owned businesses were supposed to have preference when the money hit the street, and it didn't happen that way. And so, when the money did hit the street, the banks initially went to their larger balance, their bigger customers, because they were getting fees, right? So the bigger the deal, the bigger the commission back to the bank, and so they were just running a business model that's going to benefit them. It was not community focused, right? But this time around, they let the monies out initially to the smaller institutions and to get to the smaller businesses. But in between that, Carlos and I were asked by Tim Sullivan in the EDA and the Veterans Chamber, a few other folks, to kind of get in between our members and the banks. And it was very helpful. We were able to coalesce relationships with banks here in New Jersey, working with John McWeeny and the New Jersey bankers. And those relationships have now continued. So it started off a little bumpy, but it did end off pretty positively. And then this recent rollout, although we don't have the demand or a lot of calls that we got before, it was handled a little more favorable for our members than in the past. So that's a positive development, but it started off wrong.
Right. I think just a lot of small businesses across the board who didn't have strong relationships with their banks suffered a similar problem. But Carlos, did your members face the same hurdles?
Yeah, I mean, my number one hurdle, my members' number one hurdle, and I think John's also, is access to capital. And many of them don't have banking relationships. So what John said is 100% on point. When everything hit the fan and these programs came through banks and you didn't have an account open with that bank, it was virtually impossible to get your PPP application in. So because of the support of EDA and Tim Sullivan, we helped over 300 of our members get EIDL loans and PPP loans, a lot of hand holding. We had CPAs. I know John had CPAs. Were it not for those programs, our members would have been, in rough shape, because of the smaller ones don't necessarily, if you're running a restaurant and you're in the middle of a pandemic, your priority isn't having your QuickBook software perfectly updated and then everything is perfect. And maybe you don't have a CPA, you just have your husband's the bookkeeper, your wife's the bookkeeper. So we did a good thing. The chambers, the veteran chamber, because of EDA, we helped a lot of our members. But the first round rollout was tricky, to say the least.
So looking at another type of loan or grants, the EDA, New Jersey EDA, also issued some grants and some, loans. Did that go any better here than the PPP loans?
I would say initially, yes, it went pretty good, but then the money ran out so quick. I mean, as quick as they got it up, it was gone, right? And so they led another round, but for, the EDA and Governor Murphy putting some resources on the street, the government helped in a big way, both locally and from the federal level with these resources, because, a lot of businesses was closed.
Right.
Black doctors, Black dentists, Hispanic doctors, many of them were closed, and then later they were declared essential, if you will, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
These are still businesses. We look at them from the medical profession, but they have employees, they have insurance, they have rent. And so those businesses were closed. But for government resources, these folks were in pretty bad shape. So we were grateful for those resources. So we need more of that still, right? We need more grants, and we need more loans with terms that are favorable. What I mean favorable, low interest, deferred payments, year, 2 years. That's going to help a lot of folks get back on their feet. And then on top of that, we need business. We need business, particularly a lot of corporations are stepping up. Carlos mentioned Horizon, I think is doing a great job. We have PSE&G stepping up. We still have a lot of utilities out there that are not doing what they could be doing. And they're publicly regulated. They'll come in for their rate increases, but they're not reciprocal either. So JCP&L, we're working with pretty good, South Jersey Industries. But some of the folks I'm not naming, there's a reason I'm not naming them, because they're playing games still. And so for me, I can't speak for Carlos, but in 2021, we're going to start naming some names, right? And calling them out, especially when it's taxpayer money and when these are public utilities, gas, water, telecoms. Verizon is doing good, AT&T. There's a few others that are stepping up in that space. But there's a large delta, a large gulf where these folks can fill with more opportunities back to the people that's keeping the lights on. And it's not fair. It's not equitable.
What do your members need in 2021 to maintain or grow their businesses?
So let's take the health piece first, because we haven't talked much about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And our folks disproportionately were just devastated. So the vaccines need to, and this is the first time I'm saying this publicly, because now we're getting this question, but you got the essential workers, which are the priority, which is great. But then the people, the Black and brown folks who have suffered the most, we should be earlier on that food chain, or everybody needs to get vaccines at the same time. They need to dispatch the National Guard, any other volunteer to stick this vaccine in people's arms. So the supply got to be there. and the distribution got to be expedited at a crazy rate, right? That's on the first thing. The next area for me is opportunities. And so I talked earlier about the public sector, and I think there's no reciprocity that's equitable. At the level of Black and brown people in this state who have put their last dollar, blood, sweat, and tears to stand up these businesses, the state should be able, and the county and the municipality, all the public sector should be a little more intentional about doing business with Black and brown people in the state. And then, the corporations and so on and so forth. So for me, let's get the health right, preventative care measures right going forward, access to affordable health care right, but then opportunities and jobs should fall right along that same continuum.
So Carlos, what about you and the community you represent? What do you see as vital for 2021? The medical vaccine front, any other types of economic
I believe the
relief?
vaccine is important. However, what's really top of mind, and we want to be intentional this year, and John and I are dealing about with 5 or 6 different organizations, is what he said, procurement. And I want to make it clear, because I've gotten some wacky social media posts, and I've read even some of John's when he has an article in NJ.com. Why is there a Black chamber? Why is there a Hispanic chamber? There's not a white chamber. So I just want to be very upfront. I'm not asking for any handout. I'm asking that we have a level playing field, and all of New Jersey's companies are able to compete fairly and equitably. So if you're a company and your consumers are 20% Hispanic, 20% African-American, and your spend as a vendor does not equal that, and your board of directors doesn't look like that, and your executives don't, that's a problem. And people are seeing that more and more, because I look, when I spend money, and I spend a lot of money, I pay a lot of taxes, but I look at board of directors, and if I'm buying, an expensive car, or I'm getting my health insurance, I want those companies to look like me, and I want them to spend, like the utility companies, if they're getting 50% of their income from black and brown folks, and they don't have one board member that looks like us, and they don't have programs to spend with our community, that's a real problem. It's just business 101. And I'm shocked at the amount of corporations that fail. And I have to put pressure on state government too, because that's taxpayer dollars. So if their projects are not being bid in a way that all people eat at the table and all people have a seat at the table. So that's my 21 goal for the chamber. We want to have more access to opportunities for procurement, because we're ready, willing, and able. There's a lot of Hispanic-owned businesses that are hungry, and they're chugging through this pandemic, but they're chugging through because they feel there's light at the end of the tunnel. And John and I have to deliver that to them.
But at the end of the day, we're relevant. Carlos's brothers and sisters are relevant. We're not asking you to give us anything but a level playing field to compete. And we have men and women that are willing to add value to that opportunity. And so that's what diversity and inclusion is all about. It's about a value proposition where this is not charity. This is not an emotional engagement. We want to make our state more competitive, more better for all of us.
All right, gentlemen, do either of you or both of you have any closing thoughts on anything? And Carlos, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. I think this is the time you really value your chamber and your chamber membership, because I want to say dozens of chambers this year have closed because they weren't ready and they didn't provide the one-on-one mentoring, but not to pat John and myself on the back. We're doing a damn good job, and it's not because of John and myself. It's because we have teams and structures and policies and procedures in place that we're going to survive. We're going to survive anything. Right. But when you go out there shopping for your chamber, look at the value that they present to you. And, you could join more than one chamber. And this year on my to-do list, I talked about procurement. It's about holding hands a little more with organizations like John and the Women Chamber and the LGBT chambers. We're in this together. We have similar struggles. We're not monolithic, but man, we have similar struggles, and let's use that as a reason to team together and to buy, between our organizations and really put pressure. Because at the end of the day, we're just trying to help all New Jersey businesses. I've never turned somebody down from a free class or a free entrepreneurship because they're not Hispanic. We welcome everybody. The only caveat is that they're people with an open heart, accepting Hispanic businesses, accepting African-American businesses, and accepting that we have to be on a level playing field. If you come in the door like that, you're my friend, you're my ally, and we're going to work together. And that's how we're going to get out of this, recession of 21. It's by working together.
Carlos is 1,000% right. I mean, both of us have had a history of making brick out of straw. We're resilient people. We're persevering. But more, we have a heart for mankind. We're very forgiving. We want to be accepted, but we want to be respected as well. Our respective chambers are genuinely committed to contributing to the success of those who invest, and we are strategically aligned with resources and people of influence that we can leverage to get them in a better place. So this is a good investment in both our chambers, and we're committed to doing all we can to make the state better by being more inclusive. And so I want to end on that.
All right, guys, that about wraps it up. And want to thank both of you for joining us today for this very enlightening, and I know I learned a lot, this conversation. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
To learn more about the statewide Hispanic Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey, visit shccnj.org. To learn more about the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey, visit aaccnj.com.